All right, Hosea. Does anybody have a footnote or something about the meaning of his name?
Salvation.
Right, salvation. It is salvation, and Joshua's name before was Hosea, which is very similar, meaning again salvation. And then Joshua means what? Just while we're on it. Anybody? Joshua.
Deliverer, and also is it salvation?
Yes, salvation is of Jehovah, or deliverance in that sense. So salvation is of Jehovah. And what's the New Testament name for Joshua?
Jesus.
Right, Jesus. So Jesus was Joshua in the Hebrew, which we don't think of very often. But so there's just, you can just kind of see that relationship in those names. And Hosea is bringing a message of doom and destruction to the people, but also a message of salvation that would, of course, eventually come through the Messiah. When you read this book, you see both the goodness and the severity of God on display. There's a lot of mercy, love, forbearance, patience, kindness, but then there's also the wrath of God that is displayed and is foretold that would come upon the people. Hosea 1 verse 1. Let's grab that and then talk just a minute about what's mentioned there. Hosea 1:1. Who has that? Clint?
The word of the Lord that came to Hosea the son of Beeri in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash, king of Israel.
Okay, so let's break down these kings here. Uzziah there, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, all kings of Judah, but who's Uzziah? Yes? Anybody remember what kind of king he was? Okay, mostly good. He became proud. He was struck with leprosy. But yeah, he was noted, at least at the beginning of his reign, as a good king who wanted to follow the ways of the Lord. Jotham, anybody remember anything about him? I don't think he's one we think of very often, but he was a good king as well. What about Ahaz? Okay, very wicked. Yeah, you don't get very far in the kings of Judah, good, good, bad, 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 good, bad. So you don't get far. Then Hezekiah. He was a good king, right? In fact, he's one that kind of stands out among nearly all the kings of Judah that was a good man and close to the Lord and trusted in the Lord. So you've got a mixed bag of them there, but you have him prophesying during the times of these kings. And one of the things you understand going through this, that even though there were some good kings, there was still wickedness in the land, because he does not only address Israel, but he also addresses Judah and the sin among the people of Judah. So even though the king was good, doesn't mean that the nation itself was wholly good or righteous before the Lord. There were still struggles. Then what about the Jeroboam there?
He was Jeroboam the second, but he was wicked, extremely wicked, and idolatrous.
Okay, yes. He remember, he reigned, I think it was, for about 42 years on the throne. So that indicates, in spite of his wickedness, that he was a powerful ruler. It was a stable time in the nation. There was a lot of prosperity during his time. They had strength under his reign. But then one of the things that's not mentioned here, it's missing, but if you go back to the history of Israel, that if Hosea prophesied during 4 kings in the northern kingdom, even though Jeroboam ruled a long time, there were some other kings in Israel that were there, but perhaps the reason they're not mentioned here is because they usually reign for a very short period of time. And one of the things that you notice in the 6 kings that follow him is 4 of the 6 were assassinated. There was great instability after his rule. And so that's also part of what you see in here, the wickedness and the trouble that brought to the nation with those changes in regime or changes of leaders and governments over that relatively short period of time. So there was idolatry in every form that existed in the northern kingdom of Israel. It was, of course, the calf worship that they had of Jehovah, the sins of Jeroboam the first that continued on, but also there was Baalism, and no doubt there were other gods that they worshiped and served in idolatry as well. So they had rejected Jehovah as being the one true God and rejected his law as being the law to live by, as we're, of course, going to see in the book here. But Hosea did primarily address Israel, though, as we said before, he touched on issues and problems among Judah. So what I want to do is kind of just a quick brief overview of the book and then pull out some of those lessons that are in the book. Chapters 1 through 3, he deals with this relationship. Go ahead.
Just a quick note, I had noted in here somewhere at some point in time that Isaiah, Amos, and Micah, all 3 mentioned some of those kings as well. So they're all 4 kind of going at the same time.
Yes, there's some overlap between them, prophesying from different perspectives to the different nations. Isaiah and Hosea overlap. Micah overlaps. Amos is in there. Yes, very good. So one of the things you see is during times of crisis, there was an increase of prophets in the work of the prophets because they needed to hear that from the Lord. They needed that message from them. But chapters 1 through 3 is where you get this relationship laid out between Hosea and the wife that he takes, Gomer, and then the Lord and his people. So let's look at that just briefly here. Let's read verses 2 through 9. Hosea 1, verses 2 through 9. Who will grab that for us? Mike?
When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go take yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord." So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. And the Lord said to him, "Name him Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will punish the house of Jehu for the bloodshed of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. On that day I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel." Then she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. And the Lord said to him, "Name her Lo-ruhamah, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel, that I would ever forgive them. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah and deliver them by the Lord their God, and will not deliver them by bow, sword, battle, horses, or horsemen." When she had weaned Lo-ruhamah, she conceived and gave birth to a son. And the Lord said, "Name him Lo-ami, for you are not my people, and I am not your God."
Okay, so that and what follows here, to question number 1 on the worksheet, I asked you to read this section and be prepared to discuss God's instructions to Hosea and what it illustrates about God. So what does he tell him to do that we find shocking? Marry a harlot. Anything to add?
No, I'll just leave that.
Okay. Now, there's debate among people. Paul?
Well, that he's talking to them at all. The very fact that they're not worshiping him, and now he's telling them to do this. The very fact that he's not,
Well,
That's
the Lord sent prophets to his people, and so that wouldn't necessarily be surprising. The shocking thing is that he tells a prophet who, by inference, this is a faithful man of God who loves the Lord and respects him, respects his word and his will, and he tells him, go take a wife of harlotry. There's debate among people about, well, was she a harlot when he took her, or did she become one after? And I suppose you could go either way. It doesn't destroy the point that's being made. Let me just ask you before I make the next point. What's the parallel?
The parallel is that Israel will no longer be saved by God and no longer receive mercy because they have committed spiritual adultery and they have alienated themselves from God. And so to understand the severity of this, the prophet is experiencing the result of an adulterous relationship by his wife and how that alters the relationship, or should alter the relationship.
Okay. You got a parallel between Hosea and Gomer and God and Israel. When God took Israel, now we know he made a covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, with Jacob. But when you look at when he brought those people out of Egypt, they were a harlotry people. They had idolatry rooted into them. And part of that comes out when you see in Exodus 32, Moses is gone, they think too long, and what do? They go and make an idol, and they commit spiritual adultery right there. When you get to Joshua, and he's gone into the land of Canaan, he tells the people, choose this day whom you're going to serve. God's on the other side, or Jehovah God. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So the people, and some of the reading you do, that through the wilderness wandering, they struggled with this idolatry. And so to understand him telling Hosea to go take Gomer, to me, it makes sense to realize she was a harlot when he married her. And they get married together, and his hope is she's going to be faithful and true and pure to me. I've had compassion on her. I'm going to show her love and kindness as God brought Israel out, showed them love and kindness and compassion, and expected a faithful relationship in return. They didn't return it to him. And she's not returned it to Hosea. And how does this come out in their life? How does he realize there's a problem? What?
Are you asking about the children that she bears as a result of those adulterous relationships?
Right. So you look at this, and it talks about Jezreel. He's naming his children as God often did. He would foretell of something in someone's name, of what would happen, what would unfold. And here he's talking about, Jezreel. He talks about Jehu, the sin of the house of Jehu. And that has reference back to the fact that God had told Jehu to go and to wipe out all of Ahab's descendants. Now, he went and did that, but he didn't do it because of his love and loyalty to the Lord. As you read that account, he did it for his own selfish purposes, because when he got done, he kept the sins of Jeroboam. He didn't cleanse it out of the land, and then he acted in his own interest. But he says, I'm going to take care of that. Then Lo Ruhamah, the daughter that's born, and he says, I will have no mercy. And then Lo Ami is what? What would that be for Hosea and Gomer? He could see very clearly, that is not my child. And so it cast out on the rest of them. Are any of them even my child? This one I know for sure isn't. And so you could imagine when that baby's born, it comes out, and whatever physical features it had, he knew for a fact it's not mine. So he knows for a fact his wife's been cheating on him, and she has been a harlot. So he tells him to go and do this. And so what's the parallel between Hosea and Jehovah? How did Hosea feel? How do you think he felt about this wife, these children? Then what does that say about the Lord?
You give this person, your fidelity and your heart, and you are trusting that they're going to reciprocate, and you basically get slapped in the face, and that's what God did with Israel and with us, is that he gives everything to us, and we turn around and, treat it like nothing.
Right. He shows that love, that kindness, that graciousness. He's seeking our best interest, and then we turn around. And that's what he's saying. The children of Israel, this is what you've done to me. Illustrating it in the life of the prophet. And you can't help but to have sympathy for Hosea, that the Lord told him to go do this. But you admire him because he did do it. He had an inkling of, I'm going to have trouble here. Tell me to go marry her, and then this unfolds. This child is not mine. There's a problem here. So the Lord is using that to illustrate that relationship that he had with Israel. And he says, look, there comes a point where you're just not my people. It's very clear. Now think of it this way. Think of Israel as the parent and the individuals as the children. What is the nation producing? What is the nation turning out? It's not turning out loyal subjects of the Lord. It's turning out apostates, idolaters, pagans. And so the Lord sees that and knows that. So let's look at chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. 4 and 5. Who will read that? Go ahead, Hank.
I will not have mercy on her children, for they are the children of harlot. For their mother has played the harlot. She who conceived them has behaved shamefully. And she said, I will go after my lovers, who gave me my bread and my water, my wool and my linen, my oil and my dirt.
Okay. So he's talking about Israel. Here's what they've done to me. They're children of harlotry. That is, they are of paganism. And she says, I will go after my lovers, give me my bread, my water, my wool, my linen. That's attributing their blessings to idols. And he's saying that's the way that she's behaving. That's where her heart is. And I will not show mercy to her children under those conditions. So he carries that through chapter 3, really, and talking about that she's unfaithful, just as Gomer was unfaithful to Hosea. Anything through 3. Again, we're going to circle back to some of these things, but
Just a question, Stephen. As we understand, in the old law, the adulterer, the adulteress, they were to be stoned or put to death because of committing that. So how does that figure in to what has transpired here?
it's the way I would understand that is God is saying, I'm showing mercy. Hosea is showing mercy to his wife. He's not bringing that to the fore, and it's not being, in other words, there's forgiveness being extended here. Just like David, remember that he committed adultery and the Lord said, you're not going to die. That was the penalty, but the Lord extended mercy specifically to David. And here, he's trying to illustrate that relationship. Look, Israel, you deserve to die, but I have taken you back time and again, time and again. And Hosea has taken Gomer back and taken Gomer back. And chapter 3, it talks there about verse 2, I bought her for myself 15 shekels of silver and 1.5 omers of barley. You shall stay with me many days. And this is after they were married. She had gone and she's practicing harlotry. She's a prostitute. And he goes and he buys her and brings her home again. So that's how I would see that. Any thoughts?
Well, I appreciate you expressing it that way. And with God's, if you will, involvement in this, it is for that purpose of teaching that lesson, as you described it, the mercy and the continued mercy that he continued to provide to Israel. So I appreciate your explanation of that.
Right. Very good. All right. Chapter 4, really through 13, it is a lawsuit that's brought against Israel, and the Lord prosecutes the nation on various charges, various accounts, and he lays out all the evidence to them. Chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Who will read that for us? Hosea 4, 1 through 3. Elijah.
Hear the word of the Lord, you children of Israel, for the Lord brings a charge against the inhabitants of the land. There is no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land, by swearing and lying, killing and stealing, and committing adultery. They break all restraint with bloodshed upon bloodshed. Therefore the land will mourn, and everyone who dwells there will waste away, with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. Even the fish of the sea will be taken away.
Okay. So brings that charge, and what does he say in that charge, particularly into verse 1 and verse 2? What are they missing, and then what are they doing? Okay, no faithfulness, no kindness, no knowledge of God. And as a result, verse 2, what are they involved in? If you go back to the 10 Commandments, they're pretty well violating every single one of them. So they don't respect God and His law. That reflects in the knowledge. And we'll get to the question about the knowledge of God here in just a little bit. But jump down to verse 11. Chapter 4, verses 11 to 14. Who will read that for us?
Harlotry, wine, and new wine enslave the heart. My people ask counsel from their wooden idols, and their staff influences them. For the spirit of harlotry has caused them to stray, and they have played the harlot against their God. They offer sacrifices on mountaintops, and burn incense on the hills, under oaks, poplars, and terebinths, because their shade is good. Therefore your daughters commit harlotry, and your brides commit adultery. I will not punish your daughters when they commit harlotry, nor your brides when they commit adultery. For the men themselves go apart with harlots, and offer sacrifices with the ritual harlots. Therefore people who do not understand betray them.
Okay, so verse 11, harlotry, wine, new wine. What does he say it's doing? Enslaving the heart. It's saying that they are living this luxurious, opulent lifestyle. They're caught up in materialism, indulgence of all their passions and desires. And he's saying this is evil, this is wickedness. They go and they burn incense on the hills and things like that. He's talking about the idolatry that they're involved in. And I'm not going to punish your daughters and your brides when they commit adultery. Why? Because the men are doing the same thing. It takes two, right? And he's saying it's so widespread, it's so overwhelming, you can't get angry with your wives when you yourself are going to harlots. Now, that's not the case with Hosea, but he's saying that's what's happening in the land. In chapter 5, verse 1, chapter 5, 1, who will grab that?
Hear,
priests, pay attention, O house of Israel, give ear, O house of the king, for the judgment is for you. For you have been a snare at Mizpah, and a net spread upon the table.
So who are the ones isolated there, or highlighted maybe? Priests and kings. Who would they be within the nation? Leaders. Yes, spiritual and political leaders. You're corrupt. I see it, and I'm prosecuting you. You're guilty. Chapter 6, 1 through 6. Chapter 6, 1 through 6. Who wants to take that a little bit longer? Philip.
Come and let us return to the Lord, for he is torn, but he will heal us. He is stricken, but he will bind us up. After 2 days he will revive us. On the third day he will raise us up, that we may live in his sight. Let us know. Let us pursue the knowledge of the Lord. His going forth is established as the morning. He will come to us like the rain, like the latter and former rain to the earth. O Ephraim, what shall I do to you? O Judah, what shall I do to you? For your faithfulness is like a morning cloud, and like the early dew it goes away. Therefore I have hewn them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth. And your judgments are like light that goes forth. For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings.
Okay, does that sound familiar? First 3 verses. Right? It's the hymn, Let Us Know Jehovah. Right? But what's he saying there in that latter part? Your faithfulness is like a morning cloud and like the early dew.
Go to the word real quick.
Right. Their repentance was insincere. It was shallow. There was nothing to it. It's just, oh, we're sorry, and poof. That sorrow is gone, and they're back into their sins again. Chapter 7, verse 8. Chapter 7, verse 8. Who's got that? Go ahead, Hank.
Ephraim has mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake unturned.
What is a cake unturned? What do we call that? They're half-baked. Okay? That's what he's saying. You're half-baked. You're worthless. You are no good. You're a half-baked people. All right. Then verses 9 and 10. Hosea 7, 9 and 10. Charles, you want to get that? 9 and 10. Hosea 7, 9 and 10. Okay. When he talks about alien devoured his strength and he does not know it, what's he getting at?
They mixed and mingled with the nations around about them and poured around with the other nations.
Yeah, they had done that, and they didn't realize in doing that, that's bringing their destruction. They don't see it. They don't make that connection. Because remember, earlier in the book says, I'm going to chase after my lovers that gave me my new wine and my grain and everything. And they think they're being benefited by mixing with all these nations and getting involved with them and taking on their idolatry. And he's saying they don't even realize that this is the thing that's killing them. Mike.
Also, that God is their strength, and as they go into these idolatrous nations and they're conversing with them and everything, they're taking pieces of God away, and their strength is gone.
Yes,
exactly. They don't realize it because they're still living this opulent lifestyle.
Right, exactly. Because of the prosperity and the wealth that they had, they're not recognizing that at this time.
So, Stephen, based on what you're saying there, they are ignorant of what they're doing. They don't realize it, but that is of no excuse. So, a lack of knowledge, willful or accidental ignorance is no excuse. You're still held accountable to the Word of God.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So he tells them there's going to be destruction and captivity. They're going to go away. Particularly, let's fast forward a little bit here to chapter 11, verses 1 through 7. 11, 1 through 7. Who will grab that? Elijah?
When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. As they called him, so they went from him. They sacrificed to the Baals and burned incense to carved images. I taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by their arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I drew them with gentle cords, with bands of love, and I was to them as those who take the yoke from their neck. I stooped and fed them. He shall not return to the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king, because they refused to repent. And the sword shall slash in his cities, devour his districts, and consume them, because of their own counsels. My people are bent on backsliding from me, though they call to the Most High, none at all exalted.
You read that, and it's such a tender picture of, I brought my child out of Egypt, Ephraim. And Ephraim, Samaria, Israel, Jacob, they're all interchangeable for that northern kingdom as the description. He's saying, I took him and took him by the arms, teach him to walk. You know how we do our little children sometimes. They'll grab and we'll walk with them to get them steady and to learn what that feels like. He said, I was doing that. I took such tender care of him. And yet, verse 7, bent on backsliding from me. It's habitual stubbornness of rebellion against me, though I've tenderly cared for them and raised them and treated them well, provided for everything they need. In chapter 13, verses 1 through 4, similar language but applied in a different way. 13, 1 through 4. Who will grab that for us? Mike.
When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling. He exalted himself in Israel, but through Baal he did wrong and died. And now they sin more and more, and make for themselves molten images, idols skillfully made from their silver, all of them the work of craftsmen. They say of them, let the men who sacrifice kiss the calves. Therefore they will be like the morning cloud, and like dew which soon disappears, like chaff which is blown away from the threshing floor, and like smoke from a chimney. Yet I have been the Lord your God since the land of Egypt, and you were not to know any God except me, for there is no Savior besides me.
Okay. So he talks about these idolaters, the people making the idols and things. And he says they're going to be like the morning cloud, the early dew, the chaff blown, the smoke from the chimney. They're going to soon go away. And that's talking about in that captivity, Assyria, as he had mentioned before, is going to come in. It's going to wipe you out completely. And there will not be idolatry anymore among the Jews.
You can kind of see the sorrow that God has, because this people, he chose this people, all the nations of the earth, he chose these people. And he could have, Abraham had other children. He could have picked any of those to kind of go with that branch or this branch. He chose these people.
Exactly right. And yes, the emotion, the pathos of it, of him saying, this is killing me, but I am done. Chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, and then we'll back up and grab the rest of our questions. 14, 1 through 4. Who will grab that? Clint.
Return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take with you words and return to the Lord and say to him, take away all iniquity except what is good, and we will pay with bulls the vows of our lips. Assyria shall not save us. We will not ride on horses, and we will say no more, our God. To the work of our hands, and your orphan finds mercy. In you the orphan finds mercy. I will heal their apostasy. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned from them.
Okay. So, and he goes on to talk about these blessings, but this is, chapter 14 is focused on that messianic message that, hey, I'm going to bring them back. Now, we know in history that the northern kingdom didn't come back. It wasn't reestablished, the southern kingdom. So there wasn't an escape from the Assyrian captivity, but there was a return after the Babylonian captivity. And so this is looking forward really to the time of the Messiah and the blessings that would come with that and the people being brought back to the Lord through the Messiah. But let's jump now back some to question number 2. And it specifically talking about chapter 4, verse 6. So let's read 4, verse 6, and then answer, what does a lack of knowledge do to people and how does this happen? So 4, verse 6, who's got it? Ron.
My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from being priests for me. Because you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children.
Okay. So before we answer the question, remember 4 verse 1, there's no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land. And he says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Back in 13 verse 4 that we read a while ago, that I believe Mike read, said, I am the Lord your God ever since the land of Egypt, and you shall know no God but me. When he brought them out of Egypt, they were to know only him. But that wasn't the case. And then chapter 5, verse 4 says, they do not direct their deeds toward turning to the Lord, for the spirit of harlotry is in their midst, and they do not know the Lord. Again and again and again, he talks about the fact, you don't know me. You do not know me. In chapter 8, verses 2 and 3. Let's grab that before we answer our question. Chapter 8, 2 and 3. Who's got that? Chris.
Set the trumpet to your mouth.
Hosea 8, verse 2 and 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. 2 and 3. Israel will cry to me, my God, we know you. Israel has rejected the good, the enemy will pursue him.
Okay. They're crying out, hey, we know you. But all through, he says, no, you don't know me. So what does a lack of knowledge do to people, and how does this happen? 4 verse 6, he spells it out very clearly.
Well, it destroys
Okay.
individuals, and it allows for decisions to be made that are destructive. It sets us on a course of error and ultimately separation from God, because the decisions probably are derived from human desires and lusts, as we would understand. If it's not from God, decisions are going to be made from some basis.
Right. As we talked about before, they're going after wine, new wine, and harlotry. And it's those desires, they're making decisions in life and taking actions based on their human desires. Any other thoughts?
This verse is indicating to us that they actively rejected knowledge. They didn't seek after it. They didn't pursue it. It's a willful ignorance. And the extension we see of that today is people willfully denying the existence of God and therefore not in pursuit of knowledge that leads to eternal life.
Right. And what did Paul write in Romans 1 about the ancient Gentile world? What did they not want to do? They didn't want to retain God in their knowledge, so they pushed him out. In Romans 1, you read down through there all the things they did, all the violence, all the immorality, including homosexuality that he talks about in there. That's where that leads. That's where this has led Israel. Destroyed for a lack of knowledge. How does that happen?
Well, their priests were not doing their job.
Okay.
They were commanded to teach the law to the people. And they apparently got caught up in everything too and didn't do their job. And so people just wandered off and did whatever took their fancy.
Well, the leadership was corrupt and they were in sin.
Well, I think another analogy could be priests are corrupt because everybody wasn't studying the law. They didn't know the law. The people didn't know the law, and the priests who should have known the law definitely didn't know the law. So they put the word of God up on a shelf, and they were living, as you said, according to their own desires. So what's the reason? They willfully didn't know the will of God. They weren't studying.
Yes, they were not studying that word. They were not applying it in their lives. That's the root cause. That's the reason you don't have knowledge about something is because you haven't studied it, or you've pushed it out of your mind. You've forgotten it. You've let it go.
And that's the same thing as rejecting God. So it's not just, I didn't know. No, you rejected God.
Exactly.
So without that knowledge of what to do, and you go about trying to feel through life yourself, you don't understand the consequences of your actions then. And it's clear that they didn't understand the consequences of where they were headed because they didn't apply these things in their lives.
Exactly. Exactly right. All right. Question number 3. Does God not want us to sacrifice? So you get over to chapter 6, verse 6. It says, "For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings." So again, knowledge popping up. So is he saying, I don't want sacrifice, or what is he saying here?
For I desire mercy, not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offering. In other words, learn about me, and you will have wisdom.
Philip?
Under the old law, sacrifice was required. So he's not saying he doesn't want sacrifice, but without the mercy and without the knowledge of God, sacrifice is pointless. It's futile.
Yeah, I think we've got Nancy, John, Crystal, then Carrie.
It was the same, just that it's a combination. It's not one without the other. The sacrifice is not acceptable if it doesn't involve the heart and the reverence towards God.
Right, John?
That's it. He wanted their hearts. He had their sacrifices, but he didn't have their hearts. He wanted their hearts. And as a result, they would sacrifice righteously.
Exactly. It fits perfectly with Saul and what he did. He thought, hey, if I sacrifice, everything's okay. No, it's not okay. Carrie?
Basically reiterate everything else, just an insincere
Yeah. It's an empty ritual. If you offer a sacrifice without knowledge, conviction, love, and devotion to God, it's pointless. And just as their sacrifices were that way, when we come and we worship, we sing songs, we say amen to a prayer or something, but we don't have knowledge of God, we don't have a heart that's devoted to Him, it's empty. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, in Psalms 51 and verse 17, it says, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. These, O God, you will not despise."
Exactly. When we have that heart that's devoted to Him, the sacrifice will naturally follow. That worship will follow. We will pursue that knowledge, hunger and thirst for righteousness. So the one comes before the other. All right, so question number 4, I asked you to talk about the principle in chapter 8, verse 7, sow the wind and reap the whirlwind, and how this plays out in the lives of individuals and congregations. So, sow the wind, reap the whirlwind. Everyone grasps that, right? You sow the wind, so you have a breeze, then you get a tornado back. So how does that play out? Can you give any examples, illustrations from the Word of God or modern times, either way? Okay, let me ask you this. How about David? When he committed adultery and he murdered Uriah, had him executed, what happened in David's life? He unleashed a whirlwind. He had one son rape a daughter. Then he had another son murder the rapist. Then you have that son lead a rebellion to overthrow the throne. And the Lord told him, here's what's going to happen because of what you've done, David. He sowed the wind, he reaped the whirlwind. Anything else?
I think that principle, as we know, is established from the beginning, that every seed brings forth after its own kind. And do not be deceived, God is not mocked. What a man sows, that he shall reap. But in that process of sowing, and also in other cases, like in the case of cancer, it starts out as a single cell, but it propagates to where it consumes the whole body. And that's the same thing. We plant a small seed like a mustard seed, but what does it produce?
Right.
Right. And so it propagates. And that's the principle of sowing and reaping. And we understand that as you're describing here in terms of the things that are errant in our lives, and if we pursue those, how much worse it's going to be, how worse the end is than the beginning.
Exactly. So you think about the Christian churches in the mid to late 1800s when they accepted the American Christian Missionary Society and instrumental music. Other than those two things, if you walked into one, you wouldn't tell a whole lot of difference between it and a faithful group. Well, where is that movement now? What about institutional churches of Christ that I was raised up in? They accepted, church support of human institutions. They accepted social recreational activities with the church. Does anybody know where they are now? Starbucks in the church building, but even,
they support everything.
bad enough. They are fighting for their lives to hold on to a simple doctrine: baptism is essential for salvation. There have been so many that have abandoned that's where it's gone, from the 1940s, 50s, 60s to today. They're fighting, and there's very few left that are holding to some fundamental teachings in the Word of God. And that error has flooded and overwhelmed them. They sowed the wind, now they're reaping the whirlwind. Nancy, then Mike.
Some of those institutional organizations are now using the same arguments because they consider where that has gone, where the whirlwind has gone.
Yes.
To be completely going the wrong way and completely wrong. And so even they consider themselves conservative now, even though they are not conservative in their practices. But one seed goes in the ground, multiple seeds are produced.
Yes, exactly right. It bears a lot of fruit. Mike, then Clint.
And I've often said before, today's liberals are tomorrow's conservatives. Because as we continue to move further and further away, to Nancy's point, no, I don't want to go that far. We're already on the downhill slope.
Yeah, Clint.
The identity of Baptists and Lutherans and Methodists, it's become, like you said, Christian churches or community churches. People are losing their identity altogether. It's waxing worse and worse. The corruption is building and building to where nobody cares about doctrine. It's what am I getting out of this when I get here? I'm ready for the rock concert.
Right.
Please me.
Right, exactly. And I'll just tell you, again, reading through Hosea, just like Amos, when we look in our society, I feel like we are exactly where Israel was right before the captivity. It's so corrupt on so many levels. And, for instance, why do we have an egg shortage? Oh, because somebody burned this factory, this thing happened, that thing happened. Could it be God? Could it be, why has a locust plague come? Why do we not have crops this year? Why is there a drought? Oh, because, your SUV this and your gas stove that. Hold on a second. God has made this world where He works in His providence, and there are consequences to wickedness. John, last thing.
I think that's the application for those people of Israel. Yeah, they held around the other nations. They were still doing the sacrifices of God. They Assyria, that's the whirlwind that they were going to reap for that little bit of compromise. And I think there's a direct correlation with us today. A little bit of compromise leads you to hell. And that's the whirlwind we face.
Exactly. There's a whirlwind coming. There's no doubt about that. There is a whirlwind coming. We need to be like those where it talked about, let us know Jehovah. Let's get to know Him. There would be people that would be faithful to the Lord in the midst of that. Not everybody was totally corrupt, but there would be people that would be faithful, and that's what we need to be. All right, thank y'all. Appreciate the extra time. Sorry to run over there.